It reminds me, this is a little shady. Whenever we were doing screen printing, I'm pretty sure we're the reason why they took those down.
That Facebook ad campaign came after we got locked out of this. So the first thing we did, all of the fraternities, we're not going to share this, are we?
Yes, we are. They want to know.
I was looking at Google Trends the other day, and the interest in starting a side hustle or ideas for a small business are down over the last 4 or 5 months. At the same time, there's been a spike in searches for losing your job. It's actually at the highest level since 2008 and just right behind the 2020 pandemic. The biggest difference this time around is it's all fear. So people are scared of losing their job, but they're not actually seeking out unemployment. Unemployment is relatively low. What that means is we have potentially an incredible opportunity for starting a side hustle right now, because everybody else is updating their resume, afraid of losing their main gig, and anybody who starts now is going to have low competition. Now that specifically shows up in direct-to-film printing. We've noticed that direct-to-film printing has reached its peak. So it peaked out probably 5 or 6 months ago. I'll show the graph on screen, and it has consecutively dropped for like the past 6 months, pretty much ever since December. And while it's dropping, there are other technologies that are on the rise. So I think we need to talk about what that means for the industry when DTF starts to fall in popularity. Does it mean it's the death of direct-to-film printing? Does that mean that it's all over, or is it just evolving and maturing? That's kind of the topic of today's discussion.
So why do you think DTF was so popular in the beginning? What made it so appealing to so many people?
Oh man, I mean, just the idea of being able to do one-offs with no setup, anything like that. If you can print a single design, somebody comes in and they want to print a single t-shirt, it's kind of a no-brainer. And I think the big key for DTF over some of the other technologies that bridge the gap between DTG and now DTF was the difficulty. You know, if you look at something like white toner, there was a higher barrier to entry, there's a high cost per piece, whereas DTF, in terms of the actual process of making the transfer, you shake it, you bake it, you send it, you can send a trained monkey in to produce transfers, as opposed to...
I think that's so interesting that you say that, because like as someone who's been in the shirt business and industry for a while, I don't think that I, in the beginning, would ever have even considered a DTF.
We still wouldn't, really, yeah.
Just for upkeep alone.
I know.
And day to day, do you have to flush it out? Do you have to, you know, just turn it on and go? Like, what are the parameters of, you know, your needs for your business? That's why I was so surprised at how popular DTF became so quickly.
We've seen a huge spike in concern just about
the unknowns.
Yeah, just the unknowns in general. So I think that's kind of something that people don't really consider. You know, you can't run something like that in a bedroom with a bunch of smoke and fog and things like that.
So what do you think are some key examples of small or unqualified buyers who initially jump into DTF and then later realize that it wasn't a good fit?
I mean, this is the same thing that happened with direct-to-garment. Anytime a new technology comes out, you see a huge spike in people who are picking up the printer, even if it's not right for them. With DTG, though, the problem was this was $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 machines. So you had people who didn't have any business, and they didn't have any business buying that for their business, going out and getting huge loans to get those printers. And then what happens is you realize DTG has kind of a minimum and a maximum operating range where you have to produce something every day because it's ink-based, but you can only produce so many shirts at a time. Right. So you get a big order, you can't run it like you could with screen printing, but you've still got to keep it operational. So that alone was, I think, made it a bad move for a lot of people. And we see that with every single new technology. People bought into sublimation heavy again, and then they find out that they're stuck with poly or high poly blends. With direct-to-film, I think specifically, it was affected less. It has been and continues to be affected less than direct-to-garment, because you have the ability to produce transfers for later. So you could say, okay, if I got a retail store, I can produce transfers for later. If I have somebody else who has a heat press, I can now become their wholesale manufacturer. That's what makes it different, and I think that's why it's
and the shirt type, right? DTG is different shirt type than DTF. DTF is almost anything, whereas DTG is very specific.
DTG is pretty much cotton only until recently.
Right.
I don't think they did a good job with the pre-treats on non-cotton blends until recently.
Yeah.
So DTF, though, yeah, you're right. It's 100% anything.
The one thing that I will say with DTF, there is a specific type of buyer for it. So you had a lot of people that were going from things like white toner printers to DTFs, and they were the right type of customer.
Yeah.
What did their business models look like? Were they, like, can an individual jump into a DTF and expect to profit off of it?
I mean, I think with anything, when somebody buys a piece of equipment, you have to look at the motivations and the preparation of the company beforehand. The number one thing I've always said is, if you don't have the sales, if you don't have the traffic to drive the need for a piece of equipment, you're really better off outsourcing. It would be better to order transfers. It would be better to outsource to a screen printer rather than go out and pick up a piece of equipment and hope that you can bring in the business afterwards. There's a lot more people that get burned buying equipment than people that are so thankful that they have the equipment because they don't know where to stash the extra profit.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not to scare people away from taking risk, but there is a level of preparation and sorting out a lot of the unknowns.
Knowledge.
Well, just like in your recent video, you know, you said how many people told you no, how many people said you need more experience. There's a difference between diving in headfirst naive and getting your feet wet and saying, I'm going to make a huge financial decision that could impact me, and I really don't have a plan for how to get to this financial goal, you know?
Right. So this whole video is about how DTF has peaked. The next question is, do you think that that means that DTF is going to die?
No, I just think it's becoming a much more mature technology. We see this with every new technology. It takes off, you get a huge amount of sales, and then once the newbies kind of buy out the equipment and the generations of equipment get more mature, you have a different type of buyer emerge.
Those are expensive newbies.
Well, I mean, for a while, anybody could get a $5,000, $10,000 loan and just qualify. Credit's tightening up now, but it wasn't that way for the past 2.5 years. So there were a lot of people who may or may not have had any business getting a piece of equipment, buying a $5,000 piece of equipment to start their side hustle. But once that initial burst, that early adopter, that early majority wave picks up the equipment and then they've got their pieces of equipment, then it's going to shift. And you're going to see people who are already successful on the platform now going out and buying their second larger piece of equipment. So what's probably going to happen now that we see the interest falling, it's not going to die. We're going to see a lot less entry-level machines getting sold, and we're going to start seeing that $8,000 to $38,000 to $50,000 machine range starting to take off. Now that volume of sales is obviously going to be a lot lower. 1 in 5, 1 in 10 businesses are going to go out and hit that next level, but that's where the market is going to shift.
Well, that's because those types of business models are profiting the most.
Absolutely. We have this consolidation phase taking place where the people who have already established a book of business and they've picked up clients for transfer production, now they're kind of becoming the hubs. You know, imagine in your city, there might have been 4, 5, 6 people that had DTF printers, but if they didn't make themselves known, they're only going to be servicing their own book of business.
Right.
Whereas
Which is
one
expensive.
person, but on the other hand, one person can go out and they can pick up all these other little transfer mom and pop shops.
You almost have to.
Yes.
There's a specific type of business model that works with DTF printers.
Right.
And if you're outside of that, you either have to be extremely imaginative or you have to pivot.
Well, you even have to think about your own retail. If you get into, like, let's say the print on demand or the drop shipping model, a lot of times you're not building a book of business on a durable design, like an evergreen design that you can patent and trademark. Most of the times you're going to be riding some kind of wave. So, oh, this is a cool trendy thing. I'm making $30,000, $40,000 in sales for a month and a half, and now I've got to be on the lookout for another trend. So if you are trying to keep your business or your printer busy using, you know, trend writing, that's a lot harder than having a book of 50 clients that are all servicing their own.
That's a full-time job. Just trend writing, like you just said, it is, if you don't have a specific designer, if you're doing everything yourself, that is a full-time job. And you not only have to get the designs done, you have to market the designs, then you have to post the designs, you have to make the designs, you have to ship everything. It takes a lot of time, and you have to constantly evolve and constantly look for new ideas.
One thing that you discovered too was building out an email list. Instead of just relying on the trend writing, once you've got somebody's email, what do? You remarket to them. Hey, look at our spring drop or summer drop, all that.
Marketing 101,
That changes everything, because then you can turn a seasonal business into a durable business by getting that same customer to come back again.
But you almost become a brand at that point, though.
Well, that's the goal, right?
Yeah. Well, for some people. Other people, if that is just not something that they're wanting to build, not going that business route is the best thing. They should switch to, you know, finding larger clients instead of building their own book.
Well, I mean, think about it this way, though. I think there's kind of 2 types of people that I see getting into dropshipping and print on demand. There's the kind of person that just wants to make the maximum amount of money, and they usually get where they tend to get stuck. They get stuck in the loop of trend writing, right? It feels good to get a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 hit. It doesn't feel good to spend time nurturing an email list and thinking of, you know, stuff that's going to be lower volume. So a lot of times they'll get stuck there. On the other hand, you have people who say, I want to have the next major brand. And they try to create a clothing brand that has no interest, no customers, no Instagram following, and they're trying to figure out why they can't turn sales, you know?
Yeah.
So I think really the best way to land on the brand that you want is to back into it by trying to follow the trends that are making sales and then back them into a brand that you can develop, as opposed to trying to start with a brand and go the other way.
That's a good way to look at it. And I think you have a higher chance of profiting that way.
Yeah.
And not just getting burnt out from constantly losing money.
I know.
Because that's so easy to do when you're in just like the thick of things and you can't see past, the end of your nose and you just can't figure it out.
Yeah. Well, the point of the Facebook ads video was to talk about how you don't ever want to get yourself stuck in a cycle where you're spending more on ads than you're making a profit. But it's so easy to do.
It is.
I remember when we were starting out with, I don't know if it was Pinterest ads or Facebook ads for one of your things, we dropped $10,000.
Both, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and it was like 20 days, it was gone.
Less than a month.
And we were fortunate to make enough sales that the profit offset
but
the
I was
payment,
also glued to the computer, babying everything because there was a lot of money, $10,000 in ads for a small business. That's a lot of money.
Sure, well, because it was the first time that you had done $10,000 in ads, so you were, well, $500 a day was a lot.
It was.
It was a lot to send out for ads. Yeah.
When I was doing, it was in between drop shipping and my own stuff, but divvying it up, it was a full-time thing. Yeah.
And as soon as you get locked into like a rep call or something like that, they always want to just keep you hooked for just a little while longer. Hey, let's try this a little while. And it has nothing to do with optimizations. That's a whole different story. Long story short, set a daily budget that you can walk away from. So like I said in my experiment, I started with $20. Didn't stay at $20, but I started at $20 just to test a few things. As soon as we got the first sale, you take a portion of that sale and you say, for the next 30 days, I'm going to split up this amount of money into the budget, and you just keep adding to that.
That sounds a little like gambling to me, where you're like,
ads
I'm
are
going to take
gambling.
a little bit of my wins. So I am decently new to the world of DTF. I didn't jump in. I was still on the white toner train. But I did see across my Instagram feed a lot about UV DTF. Can you explain a little bit of the difference in the businesses between
You're kind of spoiling some
DTF
stuff
and
here.
UV DTF?
Are you looking at my screen? Okay, so there are always technologies that are on the rise, and I think on the tail end of DTF kind of falling off in terms of new businesses that are getting excited about it, we see two specific industries spiking in interest all over again. One of them is the engraving business, and the other one
like
is
the X tool, like that type of thing.
Man, they're everywhere. Laser
Those
engravers
ads are everywhere.
And you see, I mean, they run the whole gamut. Anything from a 1 watt all the way up to 50, 100 watt fiber lasers and things like. They're crazy.
And one thing I saw, it was a Mother's Day ad, and it had like floral stuff all over the ad, and it was like, "Get mom what she wants," and it's like
a laser engraver. That's exactly what she wants. That's like a vacuum from 20 years ago. Let me see here. The other one, though, obviously, is UV stickers. Not just UV printing or UV DTF. It's specifically UV stickers, and it's going nuts.
Yes.
That's probably the biggest breakout trend that I've seen so far. And the other one is 3D printing. Like it's not a new technology, but we're seeing a very consistent seasonal uptick. It's on the way down because we're at the bottom of the cycle right now. I think May, June is really the lowest demand, and we see a huge increase around the holidays. But year over year, 3D printing is on the rise for the last 3 years in a row. And UV stickers for the past year has just really taken off. Depending on what your goals are. So if somebody's trying to get started right now and you want to lean into the easy early money, because that's something we didn't really talk about, DTF, the era of easy early money is over. I think that's what I didn't say earlier. Maybe we should even splice this in earlier. The era of easy early money is gone because what was happening, there was a huge amount of demand for people that wanted to buy full color transfers with no setup fees and no minimums, and they wanted them today. They wanted them tomorrow. So that meant the angle that Supercolor, FM613 transfers, all these other people had was, hey, look, we can get you down to like 10-piece minimum, but it's going to be $4, $5, $6, $10 or whatever it is. It's going to take 2-3 days plus shipping. There were all these little stipulations and restrictions that made it so that you didn't feel nimble with your heat press. And DTF solved all that. So if you were the guy in your neighborhood that had a DTF printer and you could sustain all of that local demand, money was falling out of the sky. It still is, but it's very quickly consolidating, like I said, to the companies that are growing larger and getting bigger equipment, and it's landing in the hands of new businesses less and less. On the flip side, if you're one of the first people to buy into a new technology that takes off and finds consumer demand, that's kind of a big thing. Not all technologies are created equal. Just because UV stickers are taking off and they're super exciting from a producer standpoint, it doesn't mean that people are going to go nuts for UV sticker applications. DTF was tied to t-shirts. DTF was tied to wearable imprintables. That is always going to outpace Stanley Cups and other Chotsky type laser engraving things night and day, you know?
Well, I think it depends on the business model because a lot of these UV DTF revolve around cups. And especially because the application, if you're doing something like this, because it's just, you print it out, you put it on, and that's it. Really simple compared to some of the other ways that you can apply things to cups.
Well, I mean, that's the same thing that we did 4 years ago with the market that you broke into. People were doing vinyl and one color screen printing images in this market, and we brought full color into it. That allowed us to take off.
Yeah.
Same kind of things happening now. People are no longer going to be able to get away with just glitter vinyl and cut
Right.
vinyl and little whatevers and then, plastic or not plastic, clear coat dipping them and things like that. That's going to go away, and it's going to be UV stickers applied to the surface of these cups
Just
now.
for the simplicity
Absolutely.
of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what would your advice be to a small business owner who maybe either is thinking about a DTF or a UV DTF, getting into the business? What should their business model look like? What do you think has the best trajectory for performance, looking at what you know now?
It's kind of a hard question
It is a
because
hard question.
everybody is different.
Different, yeah.
Like I think about it this way. If I could invest the entire cost of the machine and 400 hours and then probably several $1,000s in supplies and it turn nothing, like if I could just lose all of that and be okay, then you can take that risk without any kind of established sales or anything. You can dive in, you can try it out, sure. It's still gonna hurt to walk
Right.
away from that. But if it's something where you are taking your last dollar, you're financing it, and it's gonna put you in a hardship to be able to pick up that equipment, then it's a hard no. You need to make the sale and then build the business behind the sales after the fact. But I mean, I think for the most part, when I got started, I started with whatever equipment I had on hand, and then I sold. I mean, my first screen printing press was a 40-year-old hand-me-down screen printing press. I had to go make platens, which is what you put the t-shirt on, and I did the platens wrong for one of the platens, and I mounted it slightly crooked. So for the first 4 weeks of printing, and this is several hundred shirts, every fifth shirt was twisted like 12, 15 degrees.
Glowing reviews.
It was so bad. And the thing is, my first customer was a karate dojo that was literally inside this complex that I was at. And the guy comes back to me and he's like, dude, look at this. And he holds it up and the image was like this. I felt so bad. I felt like an idiot. I burned so many shirts until I figured out why it was happening.
You have the experience now, though.
But now I've got the experience.
You double-checked
So-
those platens since then.
It's so much. It's not that it's easier, but it's so much different because now if you have a heat press and you have an internet connection, there's so much that you can do without having to buy equipment
Yeah.
until you go out and get a sale.
Right.
I think it's easier to go buy a piece of equipment, even if it's a huge financial risk and it's going to put you in a hardship later. It's easier mentally to go buy a piece of equipment and then say, okay, now that I've got it, I can go get sales.
Yeah.
Than it is to figure out that you're failing live trying to get a sale. Like that fear of rejection. Like I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a $500 sale, $1,000 sale. Well, if you try to do it and you can't, then you realize, it's harder than I thought. And it's easier to blame, well, I didn't have the right equipment, I didn't, than it is to get it.
I think
Same
that's
thing happens.
almost grounds for starting on print on demand because
Yeah.
then you can test out, am I capable of doing this? Is this something that I like? Because it's you have nothing invested other than your time and it's so safe. And then once you realize, yes, I want to do this, no, I don't want to do this, then you can move forward.
And you have to be realistic about the margins with print on demand. The print on demand margins are smaller, but you have absolutely no equipment costs. There's no risks. There's no fulfillment. You don't have to get anything. No thermal, nothing. You don't. All you have to do is focus on selling. So you're essentially brokering for those companies, but that's a great way to start.
Yeah, lets you test the waters for
Absolutely.
sure. Now, this reminds me of you have the Growth Accelerator program. Talk a little bit about why that became important to you, how it helps people, and what they can expect.
I mean, the Growth Accelerator, I was helping people individually, one-on-one. And this is between like 2019 and probably early 2021. Just because we were there, we were on YouTube, we were starting to be a part of some of the equipment communities, And I was helping people solve their problems just individually. Some of the same stuff I overcame, it seemed like everybody had the same issues. And we're like, oh man, that's easy. All you have to do is A, B, C. And unless you've done it before, you might not see the pitfalls that were there. And it finally got to the point where I said, you know what, there's a lot of people that have the exact same problems that I had, and we can solve them. Let's put a group together. And I literally just sponsored everybody because we were in a really good spot. And I said, I'm going to sponsor 12 people. Let me just walk you through a 3-month program. And it was amazing.
Yeah,
it was. During that time was so electric, and I loved it. Just solving the problems and seeing the victories and the people
You were holding them
multiply their
accountable.
business. Yeah, the accountability.
Yeah.
And not only that, we were growing their businesses, but we were also growing our business because of it all. Yes.
Yeah.
So it didn't work out for us to turn that into a full program for a couple years. I mean, I didn't expect to grow our team to 7 people and still be working 40, 50, 60 hours, just maintaining the education side and the other business. But now that we've gotten through it all and we are on the tail end of all of the heavy lifting and the work, we're finally at a point where it's time for us to fully invest in YouTube and fully invest in the Growth Accelerator. So I'm building everything out, and that's what it's about. It's really about multiplying other people's businesses, seeing their success and helping them solve the same problems that we solved as we are moving through the next stage. You know, there's a lot of people who are in that under $100,000 a month in revenue range that, you know, they don't have 20 employees or whatever it is,
right?
You know, and they
Which
want
is the
to
norm,
get there. Yeah,
especially in the beginning.
I think the hardest thing to break through is making a sustainable income for yourself. The second hardest thing to do is getting enough money to be able to regularly upgrade your equipment and then hire your first couple of employees. I think those are the two, I would call them almost glass ceilings of the print industry. Is, okay, I'm now making enough money to pay for my own bills, and then now I'm making enough money to hire someone to be able to take that on so I can go prospect. And then beyond that, then it starts coming down to product selection, market selection, getting bigger clients, finally saying goodbye to the book of business that got you to $15,000, $20,000 a month, and taking on the clients that can get you to 50, 100.
So at this point, you've helped over 3,500 individuals and businesses, and they've all gone through a version of learning and growing with you, which is really exciting.
Cool, yeah.
And then I know a little bit about how much you've helped people. It's about 8 weeks, the program, and then you've had people go from like $0 to $200 to $2,000 in that time frame.
We had one person that just started their business and they didn't really have any sales. Like, they'd been open for 10 months and they sold minimally, and then they did $2,500 months just right out of the gate.
bat,
It's the beginner gains. Whenever you like apply the system, it's been, there are opportunities everywhere.
Yeah.
People don't see them, and it's like, oh wow,
They
yeah,
don't
I
know
can
what
get
to
this.
look for.
Yeah, they have no
though.
clue what to look for.
When you're starting out, you have no experience.
Even the bigger ones or the more established ones. I mean, we had
Well,
one.
they have blinders on at that point.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
We talked about that over and over again. It's like we had somebody walk in with a huge order, and people in the same sentence, they were saying, oh man, I wish I could find an order. And the guy's like, hey, service my needs over here, 600 shirts a day. Yeah, man, I really wish I could find a big order. You know, it was that bad.
I know.
But you just have to get in the habit of working on your business instead of being stuck in it.
Yeah, well, working, like you said, instead of whenever you're working in your business, it's hard to work on your business, which is the bigger picture.
And you can't spend all your time working on your business either. Because if you sit there and just, you know, think at it from 30 different angles and only work on building something out, you'll just sit there and build and build and build.
Well,
and
the
never stop.
details create the foundation.
Absolutely.
So how important do you think it is for businesses to stay flexible with all of this technology at our disposal, all of these different websites? What if someone starts with, you know, print on demand, how soon should they move on to step 2? Or if they're already in step 2 with a piece of equipment, how soon should they move on to step 3?
What is step 2 and 3?
And step 2 would be like they have a DTF or they have a white toner. And then step 3 would be like growing that to a second piece of equipment or to a different type of equipment.
I mean, but it's not everybody's journey is very linear like that, right? Some people may get into print on demand and they only ever want a broker. So for them, their next step may just be outsourcing to a screen printer for large orders. Other people may start out in equipment and they may never go into something. They may just say, okay, now I'm going to jump into embroidery, you know?
Yeah.
So for us, when we were doing the printing, we had all of our employees, we were adding other processes. It was rhinestones, it was vinyl, it was sublimation, it was screen printing, it was embroidery, and we added departments. And what that did for us, at least on a local level, was it allowed us to sustain ourselves seasonally. Middle of the year, it was a lot of embroidery for schools in preparation for the fall season. And then towards winter, it was a ton of screen printing. In spring, it was, you know, all of the maintenance guys and the handymen, everything, you know, all that stuff. So it was very, one department would drop off, another department would take off, and our income maintained itself, even though there was ups and downs for that. So that could be what it is. Somebody may be trying to outrun a very seasonal business.
Yeah, which is something that happens a lot across any business. Because when I had my restaurant, I had to find a counterbalance to something that sold well during a specific time of day or a specific time of year, which carried the whole business throughout the year sometimes because you have that ebb and flow.
One of the people I'm talking to right now is trying to build a multi-million-dollar business, and their biggest months are holiday season. So they've got months, sustained year-over-year months where they're over $200,000 a month. But then in the summertime, they're looking at this gap and saying, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
You know, how do we take the success from this season and apply it to different markets over here? So, you know, that could be the problem they're trying to solve. And, you know, the question is, where do I go from there? Well, that's where you have to start looking at opportunities and seeing what's available on a case-by-case basis.
That reminds me when I was focusing on embroidery for my business, and during the fall and winter season, sweatshirts were doing awesome. And then summer came around and I had nothing.
Yeah.
I had no sales. And so I go from almost $200,000 a year to nothing. And it was like I needed to fill in the blank with something. And so we came up with this bag that could be embroidered on, and that helped float a lot. So it wasn't something that someone wore, but I was able to use the same piece of equipment that I already had, was already spending money on, and I used it on something that I hadn't had in stock because I was doing everything myself anyways, getting a little bit of stock from somewhere that is cheaper than buying another piece of equipment and starting, you know, into something that I had no idea what I was doing.
I mean, we're talking about pivots on all kinds of levels. Like
Yeah.
when you say it's time to pivot, a lot of times people think, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm no longer in the print industry. I'm just going to go, you know, sell insurance.
Which is a bad idea. Don't do that. Yeah.
You never want to like industry pivot.
No.
That's
And not if you can help it. If you absolutely hate it, sure.
yeah, I guess if you get into something you hate it, but
Yeah.
that's totally different. I think some people, they fail on some level and they think, okay, this whole
They're a
thing is just a
failure,
dead market. And
yeah.
it has nothing to do with the market, right?
Right.
It's like, no, okay, just because this piece of equipment isn't revenuing right now, can you pivot the product you're selling, the idea you're going
Right.
after, the market you're going after, and keep the same piece of equipment? You don't need to jump and buy another piece of equipment that you have no clue how to use and you have no market. You know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah.
like, start where you're at and look for the micro pivots and then work your way up and
Yeah.
then go from there. you
Which
know?
is smart, especially when you only have so much money to allocate to something. Can you invest in different stock? Can you invest in designs? Like where can you look to see how you can use what you have?
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to someone who was looking to start a new business in the print industry? So it could be where to start, it could be how they start. Someone who maybe has a little bit of knowledge, or they know that they want to sell t-shirts or they want to sell bags or something that is in the print industry. What would you tell them?
Find somebody who has a problem and solve it for money. It's that simple.
Yeah.
If you find somebody that has a problem in the form of, oh, I need shirts for my summer school. Okay, great. I can make those for you. I don't know how. I don't know how much to charge. I don't know where to get them, but I'm the guy.
Yeah.
And then you go figure out where to get the shirts, how to get them printed, how much they're going to charge, and what your margins are, and then turn around and talk to the customer. Here you go. I've solved your problem. And then you have to step back and say, oh, that felt good. I made $500.
Yeah.
Can I build that into a business? And the answer is always, yes, you can.
Yeah.
So then you decide, okay, where was I spending money? Was I spending money on shirts because I had to buy retail? Okay, great. I can work with Jiffy, or I can work with Alpha, and I can work my way down the cost there. Okay, I was buying transfers. Well, maybe I can produce my own transfers, or I can order them from a cheaper place, right? You know, whatever it is. There's always a way to cut your costs, or say, okay, that customer, that felt good. Let me go after 10 or 15 of those customers. And now I'm a vacation school printer, or whatever it is, you know? There was a guy when I was first getting started printing, and he was he had accounts with almost every school in the state. And I mean, I remember he had a lanyard and it was just that thick with access cards. And he gave me some of my he just liked me and he gave me some of the early overflow printing. But you know, he would come up with these just crazy, his whole thing was he wanted like 9 to 12 color prints that he could send to places. So it was all running on automatic. I didn't have an automatic at the time. So I would do the art for some of his jobs. And then in return, if he had a 1, 2, 3 color job, he would send that, 500 short order my way. But all he did was service schools. We're talking like elementary, middle schools, things like that. His entire career got built around that. and that guy was a multimillionaire from
I
it.
believe it. It reminds me, this is a little shady. Whenever we were doing screen printing and we were looking for books of business that we could have larger customers on, we got into fraternity somehow. We stumbled into it. And back in the day, they used to keep all of the fraternity leader emails on the actual website for the schools.
That was funny.
And I'm pretty sure we're the reason why they took those down.
Yep.
We would email them like every single one we could get our hands on and ask them if, they wanted a cut. And do you remember
I do.
that? Yeah.
So this is totally separate. This is completely separate from the Facebook ad campaign I ran to hire people. The Facebook ad campaign came after we got locked out of this. So the first thing we did, all of the fraternities. Oh, we're not going to share this, are we?
Yes, we are. They want to know.
All the fraternities had every elected president's email on it. So you're talking, national fraternities, there could be 40, 50, 60 chapters. And we would get the treasurer, the president, just anybody we could. We would send them all emails and be like, hey, we'll give you a cut.
Yeah.
All of the shirts that you need
They
done.
all want to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sell shirt. We'll print it. We'll design the shirts. We'll print the shirts. Sell them into your fraternity. You can do a fundraiser. And we had to avoid using Greek symbols and things like that until otherwise we had to pay licensing fees. But these guys would sell to like other sororities, other fraternities. They would everybody. And then
they did all of the work for us, and then they got a cut of the profit.
Yeah, we trained them to be sales
Yeah.
reps for like 10 or 15% commission, and they
it
were
was
thrilled.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was awesome.
Until they hid all of the fraternity president treasurers.
But moral of the story, be very creative about where you get your leads from, because if it's not illegal and you just have to search for something, people are probably not doing the work to get those jobs.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good first episode.
Yeah.
It's going to get more
Streamlined.
easier to like do one of
Less
these
rough.
45-degree angle conversations with you.
talking?
Hey, what's
My
going
neck
on
is
over there? Yeah, like, so this is kind of what we're going to get into. I think every Friday we're going to start filming these, and we're going to release them whenever they get edited in between our other content. But we're here to stay. We're going to be putting out content like this and just regular content about
To help
different
you.
things.
Yeah.
It's going to be to help people. But definitely, if you want to join the conversation and talk directly to us, not in the comment section, which we encourage you to go down and write something in the comments right now. Join the Discord. And if you're interested in getting help one-on-one to grow your business, if you're hitting a roadblock or you just want to double, triple, quadruple your income, take-home income from your business, I think that's really the key.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to quadruple my revenue and headaches. I want to multiply my take-home income. Definitely look into the Growth Accelerator. Have a conversation with us. I will be happy to chat about whether or not it's a good fit for your business, because I want to see as many people as possible succeed here in 2024, 2025. See you next time.
Thank you.